Every wrestling fan talks about ratings, whether they're for Raw, SmackDown, AEW Dynamite, and NXT. But do we really know what they are, how they work, and if they really show the state of the wrestling industry? Well, I'm going to explain it all next on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. Welcome to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. For news, reviews, and conversations on all things pro wrestling, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. So every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, the internet wrestling community finds out what the ratings were for the previous night's wrestling shows, and they get into a discussion about them. But before we get into that discussion, we need to understand where these numbers come from. So first and foremost, these numbers come from a company called Nielsen, which I'm sure if you follow anything in the television industry, you know what they are. And as someone that works in television, I know who they are exactly. Well, they collect this data from a very, very small sample size. There are about 120.6 million homes that cover about 306 million people that have some form of television in their house. Nielsen only takes a sample of 40,000 homes and 100,000 people, a very, very small sample size. And if you're wondering if they're collecting your data, no, they're not, because you have to be asked by Nielsen to be what they call a Nielsen family. And you can't just apply to be a Nielsen family. You have to be actually asked via mail or phone call to be a Nielsen family. But once you are a Nielsen family, they put this black box in your house and connect it to your TV, and that's how they send the information to Nielsen that they collect the data for. And based off that data, we see a ratings report. Most of you see this from a website called showbuzzdaily.com, and they break it down with all the different demographics and the total viewership, and they rank all the shows. Now, they list the top 50 shows in the 18 to 49 demographic. Now, you're probably asking yourself, why is it the 18 to 49 demographic? Well, this is considered the key demographic used by TV networks to set prices to their advertisers so they could buy time for the commercials. And you got to understand something. When you look at these ratings, there's something very different about them. There's a difference between ratings and total viewership. Now, what a rating is the percentage of an entire TV watching population of a certain demographic. So if a rating gets a 1.0 rating, that means 1% of the TV population is watching that show. Total viewership is the average total amount of people watching a show at any minute. Now, these ratings also only track live traditional TV viewing and DVR replays on the same day. Now, what is considered a same day for Nielsen is 3 a.m. to 3 a.m. So for Monday Night Raw, it's 3 a.m. before Raw starts and the 3 a.m. after Raw ends. AEW Dynamite, 3 a.m. on the Wednesday before it starts and the 3 a.m. on Thursday morning after AEW is over. Now, you'll see these news articles or someone tweet out that the rating was 2.27 million viewers for Raw, or that AEW had a rating of 887,000 viewers. That's wrong. Those are total viewership numbers. There is a difference, as I said already. Rating is a percentage, viewership is the total amount. So instead, you should be saying that Raw got a 0.79 rating in the 18 to 49 demographic. AEW got a 0.30 rating in the 18 to 49 demographic. NXT got a 0.22 rating in the 18 to 49 demographic. And SmackDown got a 0.70 in the 18 to 49 demographic. Now, as I said before, if a show gets a 1.0 rating, that means 1% of the demographic was watching that show. So, why do wrestling fans care so much about ratings? I mean, we're not TV executives. We're not advertisers. It doesn't affect us. And you know what? That's true, because TV networks use this information to set prices for advertisers to buy that time for commercials. And roughly on average, A 30-second commercial for an advertiser, depending on the show, could be $100,000 of airtime for one 30-second commercial. And we all know the Super Bowl, when you hear about the ad time, is like in the millions for a 30-second commercial for the Super Bowl. So, the advertisers use these ratings to make sure that whether or not the ad time would be worth buying, because obviously you're spending $100,000 for 30 seconds. You want to make sure that the network that you put it on, those viewers will watch that commercial. Why do fans care about this so much? Well, honestly, it's confirmation bias. So if you're a WWE fan, you see these ratings, you might look at them as saying, oh, Raw was number one in the cable ratings. SmackDown was number one in the broadcast network ratings. An AEW fan might look at that and say, well, they're down again. Or they might see a headline in an article that says, Raw reaches a new low for a non-holiday episode. SmackDown reaches lows. Or you might remember the article from last year where SmackDown is worried that Fox is worried that SmackDown isn't getting the right amount of viewers. So they might pull the plug on SmackDown early on. In the end, it's just if the advertisers want to buy the ad space, they will. And the other thing that some wrestling fans like to use these ratings for is to kind of base them off the Attitude Era. And personally, you can't do that. There's too many factors in it. The reason for the decline in ratings is more than just a bad product. Let's look at it this way. Back in the mid 90s and early 2000s, there was only two ways to watch wrestling: live, or you recorded it on a VCR and played it back on a tape. Those are the only two ways. Now you have traditional TV, you have the DVR, you have streaming services, social media, YouTube. And the great part is you don't have to watch the entire show from beginning to end. You have clips on social media people are tweeting out and putting on Facebook all the time. You have YouTube clips. With the DVR, you can fast forward through stuff you don't want to watch. No one's watching the show from beginning to end anymore like they were during the Attitude Era. Also, Nielsen ratings were reported much differently back in the 90s and early 2000s. In fact, back then, the numbers that you see where it was 5.4, 6.0, 2.5, those were total households, not total viewers. They were measured much differently. They only told you how many houses that show reached, not how many viewers were actually watching. So yes, that might say, well, more people might have been watching than was actually reported, which could have been true because let's say, at my house, my brother Ralph, me, my dad, we're all watching Monday Night Raw, but we only count for one household, even though 3 people were watching the show. The other thing, too, is there were also fewer TV households back in 1999 and the 2000s. In fact, in 2000, it was estimated that there were only 100 million TV households, where now that's gone up 20% here in 2020. Another factor to consider is that there's fewer channels to watch back then. Heck, Comedy Central, which many of you, might know as a basic cable channel, wasn't added as a cable channel for most providers until 1998 when South Park became huge. If you were one of those that got cable channels in the 70s, you were considered high end. Now, basic cable packages come with 125 channels. So obviously, the more channels there are, the more dispersed the audience is, and that means a lower percentage are watching certain shows. And of course, with the DVR, people aren't watching live anymore. For example, when I watch, the shows on Wednesday, I don't watch them live. I watch on the DVR. I watch AEW for an hour at around 11 o'clock because I have stuff that I do Wednesday nights. When I come home, I watch the first hour of AEW and then go to sleep, wake up, watch the second hour of AEW, and then later on in the day, I watch NXT. So what I watch for NXT does not equate into the ratings if I were ever part of the Nielsen families, which, because I work in television, I will never be a Nielsen family because that's part of their criteria. You cannot work in the industry. You cannot work for Nielsen. You cannot work in the media to help with the, lack of bias or therefore for ratings. So, when you also look at these ratings on ShowBuzz Daily, you really have to look at them very, very closely. You look at these shows. How come AEW doesn't hit 1 million viewers? How come WWE doesn't get the same viewership that they did during the Attitude Era, or their viewership keeps declining? We always talk about the 18 to 49 demographic, the key demographic, the one that advertisers pay money for. But who are the ones that are actually watching television more in the traditional sense? The older audience, the 50 plus demographic. If you look at those ratings charts on ShowBuzz Daily, they will break it down 50 plus and 18 to 49 and total viewership. And if you'll notice, the 50 plus demographic, the higher that number is, the higher the total viewership is, and that ends up skewing the total viewership. Let's look at last Wednesday, for example. Now, last Wednesday was a Democratic debate in Las Vegas that aired on MSNBC that was part of the cable TV ratings. Now, in the 18 to 49 demographic, it got a 1.22 rating in the 18 to 49 demographics. In the 50 plus, it got 5.16 for a rating and an overall viewership of 7.6 million people. That was by far number one in the 18 to 49, number one in the 50 plus, number one in the total viewership. Now, the second most viewed show in cable television was the Tucker Carlson Tonight Show on Fox News. That put in 3.8 million viewers. Now, out of that, the ratings for it in the 18 to 49 demographic was only 2.27, which was actually lower than what AEW puts in as 3.1 for last week. But yet, Tucker Carlson dominated in total viewership over AEW. Well, that's because their 50 plus rating was 3.01 compared to AEW's 0.38. So almost 10 times higher the rating. So to me, TV ratings do not show you that the wrestling industry is dying. I've said it before that the ratings are a little antiquated. They don't really show a full representation. They don't really count, streaming services. There are ratings that put that into effect, but you're talking about things called C3s, C7s, multi-platform 35s, and that's way beyond the basic knowledge of television ratings that we don't need to dive into for this episode. Here's the thing that you also have to consider as whether or not the industry is dying. WWE continues to sell out football stadiums for WrestleMania. Now they're selling out baseball stadiums for the Royal Rumble. WWE is the 7th most subscribed YouTube channel on the website. It's the highest subscribed channel for all sports channels. It has the 5th most views on the website, including more views than PewDiePie, who for the longest time was the most subscribed channel on YouTube. Now, Nielsen also does social media ratings. Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, they all go in the top 10 in social media rankings. AEW, on the other hand, this is a brand new wrestling company. And within their first year, they had 2 pay-per-views with 100,000 pay-per-view buys. They're about to hit 100 million subscribers on YouTube, which is double what TNT, the channel that they're on, has for a subscriber count. New Japan Pro Wrestling and Ring of Honor sold out Madison Square Garden last year. New Japan Pro Wrestling also did 2 nights of Wrestle Kingdom in the Tokyo Dome, selling over 30,000 tickets for each show. And there's countless amount of wrestlers who are working professionally full-time without ever stepping foot in the WWE or had very limited time in the WWE. So to say that the TV ratings are an indication that the industry is dying, you're not looking at it the right way. So I'm going to put a poll above my head. Let me know what you guys think. Do TV ratings matter? And let me know in the comments why you think why or why not. Don't forget to share us all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPB Podcast. And for news, reviews, and conversations on all things pro wrestling, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. My name's Michael Valenti. Thank you for watching the Squared Circle Psychobabble.